Hey, I'm Greg.
And I'm Billy.
And we're the Fuji guys. This is a top features video, and we're going to be going through the top features on our S4000 series as well as our X6000 series cameras. And there's three models in each of these, as mentioned in the first look video. In the you got the 4600, the 47, the 4800. You've got the 6600, 67, 6800. The difference is they incrementally go up a little bit more zoom power, 26 times zoom, 28 times zoom, 30 times zoom. So other than that, all the top features more or less are the same for all of these six models. So we're going to cover the top features off with this one video, but it does, as I say, cover off several models. So Billy, go through those top features for us and show them how they work.
Let's take a look at the manual controls on the camera itself. Of course, the camera has a fully automatic mode. It also has an SR auto mode, which determines the right scene by using face detection to determine if it's a portrait or even landscape or shooting against backlight with a portrait. And of course, you got also the program auto mode, which is basically automatic. Now, you do have some controls, like I said, to adjust shutter speeds and aperture, and I'll show you how to do that. Basically, you have the S, A, and M modes. And S is basically shutter priority, which allows you to adjust the shutter speeds, and the camera will appropriately adjust the aperture that corresponds to that proper exposure. So to do that, you set it to the S, and you can push the plus minus on the top, which then allows you to adjust here the shutter speeds. As you can see, as I adjust the shutter speeds up and down, the apertures can then also adjust. And of course, you got aperture priority mode. In that mode, you basically, again, you have to push the plus minus to adjust the apertures. This camera has really just two apertures. It's either open or closed. It's actually using a neutral density filter to give you that effect. Because these sensors on the cameras are not as big as, say, a DSLR, there's a lot of depth of field, so it's really hard to isolate a subject even though you're shooting in this aperture priority mode. And so really it's more to control the amount of light coming in versus trying to control depth of field when it comes to the aperture. In full manual mode, you have both controls on the shutter speeds and aperture. Again, if I push the button here, I can push up and down, and that controls my shutter speeds, and left and right controls my aperture. As you can see, the numbers are changed. This is sort of kind of like a light meter. It tells you if the image that you have set is going to be underexposed or overexposed. In this setting at 1/80th of a second at f3.1, if I take the photo, technically the image is going to be actually underexposed. So what I want to do is I want to either slow the shutter speed down, and as you see, that line moves up to the middle now. And if I go further than that, so I make it very, very slow, I'm going to exaggerate this and take the same shot. It should give me an overexposed image, as you can see right there. And so when you want to use this control, you want to have it so that it's set in the middle somewhere. And that's going to give you proper exposure. And if you're going to take that snapshot again, you can see it's a better exposure on that. And of course, if you change the aperture, it will also slightly change, as you can see there. Basically, the neutral density filter dropped in, and now you're shooting at technically f8, which is going to give you a definitely dark image, even though at the shutter speed of 1/25th of a second. Versus switching it back to the open aperture at 1/25th, it's giving me the proper exposure. So that's just a quick look at some of the controls. Aside from that, you can always shoot in the automatic mode, and the camera does everything for you. Now, aside this camera having a super long zoom, again, depending on the model of camera you have, the zoom may vary from 28, 26. In this one here, it's actually a 30 times zoom, starts off at 24 to 720. You can zoom in out, which is great, but it also has a macro functionality, so you can actually take up very close shots. Right now I'm on the SR auto mode, and it will automatically determine if it needs to switch it to a macro mode in order to get focus, which it did. And now I have sort of a more close-up shot. I can also manually push the macro button on as well. So if I'm in a mode like P, it's not going to auto-switch to the macro focus, so I would have to do that myself. There's actually two options. There's the macro, which is about 10 centimeters, and then there's the super macro function, which is up to about 1 centimeter. So basically, I'm going to be almost touching this in order to get a proper focus, as you can see there. And it really gives me very, very sharp details. If I play back the image, I zoom in on that again. You can see here. It's quite sharp. I like shooting in macro. And macro is not just for shooting, something that's up close, whether it's a flower, bug, stamp collection. You can also use macro and zoom in on a subject, and that will kind of help you give you that sort of shallow depth of field or the isolation to the background and foreground. So if you want to, create sort of a shallow depth, you can also use the macro mode. You can also zoom in on a subject while using the macro mode, and it's going to help create that more shallow depth. See the background on that picture frame there kind of shows out of focus, and that's how you can kind of do that with this camera and the type of sensor that's on this. Here's a neat feature on this camera. It's basically the date stamping feature. Every time you take a photo, as you can see here, when you play back the images, of course, what you see is an overlay from the EXIF data, so the date, the time information, but it's actually not on the image itself. If I toggle the display button, you can see nothing really appears on the image. It's really reading from the EXIF data. Now, if you want to take a photo with this camera and you want it to have the date and time stamped at the bottom right corner, there is a feature where you can go into the menu, and I believe you have to go into the setup menu here, and as you scroll down, there should be an option somewhere here for the date and time stamp. There you go, and then you want to select that to be on, and you can choose both date as appears up here or the date and time. And I'm just going to use the date for the instance. And of course, for the date, it's based on what you have set on the camera. So if you have it incorrectly set, you can still go back to the setup to the date and set the correct date here so that obviously the pictures will show up. Now, if I take a photo with the date timestamp, as that icon appears, it's actually going to appear in my image. So let me take a quick snapshot there. And as you can see right there, let's play it back, the date is actually embedded into the picture itself. One thing is that once you do this, you cannot remove the information because it's actually permanently placed. So as I zoom in on the image, as you can see right there, it's showing 2003, January 1st, as you can see right there. And you cannot remove that, okay? So again, if you want to shoot with the date and time, that's great. Just make sure that you're okay with it on there all the time. If you don't, just go back into the setup menu and go down to the date and time and just turn it off. There's also third-party software, once you download images to the computer, that can take your EXIF data and create a date stamp anyways. So that might be the other option. But if you want it for simplicity, it is built into this camera. Now, if you want to be able to capture high-speed action shots, there is a nice mode you can use. It's called the high-speed shooting mode here. It's through this button. You push it, and it allows you to toggle between the different high-speed shooting options. There's a top 40 and a top 20, depending on the speed, of course, that you get. So I'm going to select the top 40. It gives me the fastest shot rate, but it's going to give me a resolution that's small, which is not bad. It's still, I believe, a 3-megapixel image. So if I pre-focus and then basically your subject's moving, it gives you a pretty decent shot, about up to 40 shots, and it's at high speed, and it's great for capturing action. It takes away the guesswork if you're trying to capture someone coming down the hill and doing a crazy jump, whether it's skateboarding, snowboarding, whatever. Even just wildlife shots, and you want to get the bird in action. This can help to take the guesswork away. This is when you want to have sort of a fast card. It is recording here 40 different images onto this card itself. And then when you play it back, as you can see, here are the images that were shot. So this is a nice little feature to use if you want to try to capture action photos. Let's take a look at the HD mode on the HD video recording. Let's take a look at the HD mode on this camera. To start the recording, basically there's a dedicated recording button. You don't have to be in any, you could be in any mode actually to do this, of course. And basically you just start the video by pushing the record button. It starts recording your 720p HD video. This has the stereo mics, of course, and the built-in speakers, so it's going to pick up the audio and it's going to play it back. You can zoom during the video recording process, as you can see. And there is continuous autofocus that adjusts, as you can see, when you zoom in, zoom out. Okay. You can stop the recording by pushing the record button, and it stops and stores that into the card. You can push the menu OK button to configure different options in the video, like the autofocus mode. You can select it to be continuous, meaning it always constantly focuses, or you can have it set to the center, which means you set the focus in the beginning and it sets as that so it doesn't adjust. You also have face detection built into it if you wanted to use that for focusing. You also have the different video modes, so you can select from the 720p HD video, which gives you about 7 minutes here. You can do the 640 VGA and as well 320 resolution video. So generally you want to leave it on the HD video, and basically that's how you sort of do a start and stop of the HD video. On playback, of course, it shows up like that, and you push down on the directional pad and you can actually play the HD video. It has the built-in, again, speakers, so you can hear the playback. So that's, again, just a quick look at the video features of this camera. Let's take a look at the instant zoom feature on this camera. This little icon here on the directional pad allows you to adjust the different instant zoom options. Again, you can toggle between this here cropping, a smaller cropping, or even a portrait type of cropping, and even a smaller portrait cropping. And what's useful about this is that you can try to capture action shots, and you really want to get the most enlarged area. By using this crop zoom or this instant zoom feature, you can sort of anticipate the subject moving into your scene, and as they come into the scene, you can take the photo and you basically will get a full resolution image of that. So let's imagine the subject is right here, it's off the scene, they're running into the scene, you then take a snapshot, it's going to end up cropping inside that area. When I play it back for you again, you can get sort of a full resolution of that image. So it's nice to have. Again, different options, of course. You can do even a portrait setting here where I take a snapshot and it automatically crops it as a portrait for me. And again, on playback, it's going to give me the image already cropped at full resolution of this camera, which is nice to have. But it's a very useful feature for trying to capture action shots where it gives you a little bit more of a viewing window. So as the subject comes into play, you can actually anticipate them moving in again. They come into the screen, you snap, and you basically get them in the center of the shot. And it's a much larger shot versus if you didn't use the zoom, it would end up with a much wider angle shot with more scenery, where generally you want to be more close up with the scene. So that's just a quick look at the instant zoom feature on this camera. Let's take a look at the motion panorama mode on this camera. To do that, you have to set the shooting dial to the panorama mode. So I'm just going to rotate that dial until it gets to the panorama mode. And it allows me to take actually 3 consecutive shots, and allows me to stitch it together automatically. And again, you can select from going left to right or right to left. So I'm just going to leave it at the default. You're going to take your first shot, and the exposure and the focusing is going to be set for the first shot. So again, you do that. It's then going to give you sort of that little plus and then the circular plus. And all you have to do is line up that marker, and it's going to automatically take the second shot for you without you pushing the shutter button. And you do the same thing again. So once you line it up, and then it processes the panoramic file within the camera itself and gives you a nice 3-stitch image panoramic, which is kind of nice. And it's very simple because you don't have to push the shutter button. You don't have to spend the time to figure out what lines up or what not. The camera kind of decides that for you and assists you. And again, when you take a look at the panoramic mode, as you can see, it's really quite nice. You can zoom in and play it back like that. You can see this is sort of the Fuji guys' filming room. And again, a nice little feature to have on this camera.
Well, that's great. Love the panoramic shooting, first of all. I use it a lot myself, so that is something, once people get the knack and know how to use that on their camera, they really love it. Again, one of the key features of these cameras, regardless of which model you end up choosing, is that just fantastic range on the zoom. So whether you're shooting video or stills, it's nice to have such a wide range on the zoom. So thanks very much for that description, Billy. So if you want to look at this or other videos, please subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Follow Billy on Twitter to keep up to date with everything that's new with Fuji. So until the next video, I'm Greg.
And I'm Billy.
And we're the Fuji guys.